perhaps we will someday. In the interest of time, I'd like to close with sort of a two-part question. One is for these new mamas who are holding their little bundles of joy for the first time. You talked about attachment parenting early on and said how it certainly can be linked to secure attachment, but not necessarily.
Right.
One of the biggest pushbacks a lot of gentle parents get is, you're coddling your child, you're creating a mama's boy or a daddy's girl, this child is never going to leave your side, never be self-sufficient. So for the parent who wants to breastfeed, possibly even do extended breastfeeding, for the parent who wants to baby wear, for the parent who wants to sleep with their child safely in the same room, and practice all of these crunchy, gentle, conscious, positive parenting, whatever you call it, practice this way of parenting versus the mainstream alternative. Is there, part one, is there science that either supports or discourages this type of responsive parenting? And along with that, you mentioned earlier on in the call that it can be exhausting. I parent this way myself and always have. And yeah, 7 years later into my child's life, I still have dark circles. There are days when I'm just plain tired. And, do people ever have more than one child when they have shown up in all of these ways for the first year and beyond?
Yeah, I love that you asked this because, we do, especially from family members, we can get a lot of pushback about this kind of parenting. I remember with when I had first had two, one was like a 1-year-old and one was 4. And my 4-year-old was having a really hard time, and my 1-year-old was also crying. And I crouched down low and I was saying, "You're having a really hard time. What is your body saying it needs right now?" And I'm doing all of this reflective dialogue. My grandmother, well, and they first started criticizing me because we used baby signs, which was phenomenal. I'm a huge fan. My kids, before they had the motor capacity to talk, could tell me if they were hurt. They could tell me if they needed comfort. It was just phenomenal. I loved it. And they were like, "They're never going to talk. You're raising like Coco, that ape, like they're never going to talk." And of course, they were early talkers and they did fine. They're just fine. But when they would see me parenting and getting down and all this stuff, at first they were like, "You just need to smack him and tell him," they didn't get it. And they were worried that I was being really indulgent. And as my kids got older, I remember, I'm feeling the emotion of this right now too. So it's okay if I get a little emotional because that's human emotion. But I remember my grandma saying, "I can't believe how amazing your kids are and how much facility they have in handling themselves. They're so well behaved." Like, she was shocked because she thought they were going to be little monsters. And she's like, "They're so well behaved." And she said, "I wish I had known about what you know about. I wish I had parented that way." And it was so amazing because this was a grandmother who had a significantly avoidant attachment that she passed down to my dad, that my dad, parented me in that way. And so for her to see it it just felt like such good affirmation. And what the science tells us, and this is what's so great too about the bottom line for babies, you can like turn to the discipline entry and you can be like, "Here, mother-in-law, read the science, and then we can talk about it." Is that the science is super clear that when we push kids to be independent or to be well behaved, where we're just focusing on the behavior, if we push them to do those things without our support, it actually backfires. It actually makes them either more dependent because they developmentally weren't ready for that without the support, or they actually know not to share their distress with you. So they just stay uncomfortable, but they just sit with those alone feelings. What the research shows is that when you are a safe haven and you practice gentle, respectful parenting, and you really focus on those 4 S's, safe, seen, soothed, secure, which are just my North Star. They're always my answer for every situation. What the research says is that it actually promotes independence, it promotes better behavior, all of these things. So the science is on our side with this, including extended breastfeeding. And look, I just want to say this. no one knows your child like you do. And you are the expert on your child. Get informed. Yes, read books, read about what the science says, but you can't follow every single thing that the science says. Some of them are even counterproductive, like, or counterindicated. Like one says, be a really well-rested parent, and the other one says, breastfeed your child on demand for the first several months of, of life. You can't be both. You can't follow both of those. So every child is unique. Follow the lead of your child, and what works for your family might be totally different. And what I say in the book too is that I had best friends who had babies about the same time. And like, if you looked through the bottom line for baby on over 60 topics, whatever I did, my best friend did the exact opposite. We did and it was stuff that was really hard. We had a lot of conflict, especially around sleep training and co-sleeping and spanking. Like, there was just a lot that was wildly different. And what's interesting now is our kids are grown now. Our firstborns are adults now. And we did things so differently on all the decision making, and her child is awesome and my child is awesome. So the thing that we both did is the 4 S's. Our children knew we would show up for them, and that's what matters most. But I think around this gentle parenting, what we're doing is we're giving kids reps for using their prefrontal cortex by saying, I'm noticing this. How do you think we can solve that problem? Instead of saying, get over there and sit down. And what we know from the science too is that parents who do that more command and demand authoritarian type of parenting, it doesn't change their children's behavior. Their children learn to hide their behaviors. And when they're adolescents, the science says, they don't go to their parents when they're in tricky situations, they go to their peers. So when our children come to us with bad behavior, which is often a symptom of a dysregulated nervous system, and they're saying, I need help right now, when we respond to them and we show up for them, when they say something that we think is even, like if they're like, I wanted popcorn and why won't you give me popcorn? And you're like, really? Because I'm taking you to the movies and you're going to say that, and you get so, upset about your child being spoiled. In that moment, if you respond that way, our child is like, okay, I just shared how I felt with them. I'm really disappointed. And I shared that and I feel criticized and that didn't feel good. When our children communicate with us and we respond in ways that don't feel good to them, they will stop sharing with us. When we say, I don't want to hear it, they internalize that. So that doesn't mean I give into the popcorn. I can say, I know you're so disappointed you wanted the popcorn. We're not buying it today. And I know it's disappointing. It's hard to feel disappointed. So it's not about the boundary. I'm going to hold the boundary. But it's really about saying yes to our children's internal experiences, showing up for them. And the science has our backs on this. Extended breastfeeding is supported by every health organization around the world, up to age 3. If that works for you and your family and it feels right, do it. I want to empower you. You know your child, trust your instincts. And if anybody's criticizing you, listen, they might have a point, but don't let it rule your life.
Absolutely. And if they need the best reference book that I have found to date on why we do what we do for babies, your new book is it. I will unequivocally recommend it to every new parent, to every existing parent, even if they already have a child or 2 or 15. There's just so much great, compelling information in here, and the world needs to know that there is some really smart parenting advice that we know to be smart because we have the science to prove it. So we don't necessarily have to repeat these generational patterns that even you and so many of the rest of us have had. We can choose to do what works for our family. Science has our backs when we make what seem to be different decisions from so many around us. And your book provides exactly the kind of validation that we need as we go into parenting. So thank you so much for writing it, for writing all the other books you've written, for existing, and for being a resource for people around the world who really just need to know, I can figure this out. This child might just make it to day 3 and day 4 and beyond, because it all feels new sometimes. So thank you, Tina. I would love to chat for the other 15 hours as soon as we can.
Thank you so much. And, I think too, we have to remember everybody's kid is different. And one kid, what works for one kid doesn't work for the next. And so I think it's really important that we really follow our children's lead. And I want to say to you too, parents, you know, if you don't have time to sit and read, and I'm actually writing an article right now for how parents ever find time to read, some suggestions, but all of my books are in audio form, and I've done a lot of podcasts just like this one on no drama discipline, on whole brain child, and my website, tinabryson.com. You can find tons of free content. I post stuff on Instagram all the time, just helpful little snippets and resources. So you can find me there as well. But I want to say one final thing, if it's all right, Sarah, and then I'll let you close this out. Parents, I just want to say to you, like, you sacrifice so much for your children. I know you do. If you're listening to this podcast, you're a parent who is really intentional. And we're so good at sacrificing and giving to our children. But I want to say to you that you matter too. And we need to really, really, I'm such a hypocrite. I was terrible at this when my kids were younger. I'm better at it now. But you really do matter, and your children, what they need most from you is you, and for you to be present. And in order to do that, you really do have to take care of yourself. It's one of the best things you can do for your kids.
That is an important gift and an important takeaway. So thank you for that. And I will do my best to implement that personally and encourage the other parents seeing this to do that as well.
We got
Tina,
to keep working on it.
exactly. Thank you so much, Tina.
Thank you.